After a stunning playoff exit in 2019, Lamar Jackson got his first playoff win, but it came in the wild card round before getting completely stomped by the Bills. All the Ravens could muster was a field goal, losing 17-3. Jackson throwing an interception in the end zone. The Ravens did win their last 5 games of the regular season to make it into the playoffs, but they were sure the best rushing team in the league, and Lamar Jackson is a big part of that, but fewest passing yards through the air, averaging just 171 yards per game passing. So let's get the offseason outlook for the Baltimore Ravens. We have Bryant McFadden and Danny Kanell. Danny, which way are you going to go here? Is it a step forward because Lamar got that playoff win, or is it a step back considering what he was able to do in his MVP season the year before?
I think it was a step back, but I think you have to consider where the bar was set in 2019 when Lamar Jackson won the MVP trophy. That was a phenomenal season. So a step back for Lamar Jackson is still better than a lot of quarterbacks out there. But I do think this is a critical year for Lamar Jackson to kind of showcase that he can evolve and become a legitimate passing threat. And it shouldn't be an insult to Lamar Jackson. He just has to develop in a league. Yes, you can have the best running offense, and yes, you can be a dynamic, unbelievable threat as a quarterback. But what happens when teams take that rushing game away? That's the question that Lamar Jackson has to answer, and he hasn't been able to truly show people that, hey, I can put this team on my back for an entire game and win it through the air. You saw the drop-off in touchdowns reduced from 36 to 26. The interceptions went up from 6 to 9. The old adage that once you get more tape, defenses start to figure you out is true in the NFL. And I do think teams have done a much better job of corralling Lamar Jackson, keeping him in the pocket where he's not as dangerous as a runner. But I would also say the Ravens are at fault for this too. They have got to give him, and we'll talk about this in needs they have to address, they've got to give him somebody on the outside or multiple threats on the outside so that his running ability actually becomes an asset and it opens up things in the pass game, and you have the type of weapons that can take advantage of it. So as much as it looked like, yes, the teams had the answer for Lamar Jackson, the Ravens really didn't provide him with much help this past season, but I do think they'll address it this offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you, Danny. Individually speaking, it was a step back. Didn't have the same numbers he did during his MVP year. But the bright spot with Lamar, he was good enough still for them to get into the playoffs and win a playoff game, right? And I don't think there were a lot of people that expected to see Lamar repeat the same numbers he did from his MVP year, because that was just an unbelievable dream-like storied year. But he still was good enough to be able to get into the playoffs, win a playoff game, and put up real winnable-like numbers. And I think that is something to grow, because remember all last year, right, leading up into the playoffs, can Lamar get past the ghost of playoff football? He was able to get past that ghost. Now it's all about taking another step further in the right direction, team-related and also as an individual.
They do have a bit of an issue on the offensive line, though. The right tackle, Orlando Brown, is unhappy. He wants to go to the left side. There are trade rumors swirling out there. Danny, how do you think they should handle that situation?
I mean, he's an impressive young player. I think they should try to listen to him. And we are in the era where players have more power than ever before. But if you can't keep him happy, you better have a pretty darn good solution, because clearly this team likes to run the football, and you've got to have answers to do so. I also think at center they've got an issue they have to address through free agency. So the offensive line clearly is an issue they're going to have to address. But I think even more importantly, the receiving threats that are there. But Orlando Brown is somebody who's been really impressive as a 2-time Pro Bowler that you want to keep happy. If he wants to move, I think you should look at and exhaust any and all options to see if that's a viable option to try to keep Orlando Brown happy, because I would hate to see them have to move on to him because he's simply unhappy.
Yeah, I'm not. I can't trade baby Zeus. No, not having it. The luxury that they currently have there in Baltimore when healthy, they have 2 booking tackles that are Pro Bowl, all-pro-like players. You don't usually see that from the tackle position with the right side and the left side. They have that luxury. Getting Stanley back on the left side definitely shows up an offensive line that can provide quality production for Lamar Jackson in the ground and pound attack. So they have to do everything in their power to keep Baby Zeus, Orlando Brown Jr., in a Baltimore Ravens uniform, because whatever you get in return probably won't be as good as Orlando Brown is currently. And he's still young. He's just a baby still in the National Football League, but he's been playing like an adult week in and week out. So whatever they need to do to satisfy him, or tell him we're going to flop you guys a little bit, swap you guys in and out. You might play left, you might play right. I don't know. Just pay him or do something, but you do not trade a for sure young Pro Bowl, all-pro-like player that has yet to reach his peak years because he wants to play another position. You got to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, the need's certainly not at the tackle positions on that offensive line, but as Danny mentioned, interior linemen could be a concern, especially at the center position. And Danny, pass catchers, especially at wide receiver, but also tight end on the list from Ryan Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of issues on the offensive side of the ball that they need to address. And to me, it clearly comes down to wide receiver. Tight end would be a nice luxury piece to add there. But in today's game, I mean, you have to have weapons, playmakers, got speed, guys that can get past the secondary, can open up that middle of the field for the run game truly to open up. So of all the people that need to take the home run shot at Allen Robinson, I hope the Ravens are the team that gets in there the most. And maybe even not only one, but two options. Maybe you go after multiple guys. They've had that much of an issue. If Marvin Jones Jr. doesn't follow Matthew Stafford to LA, I think you make a play at him, because that would be an incredible 1-2 option. Yannick Ngakoue on the defensive side of the ball is a player they got an extended audition with after their trade midseason. He had a few sacks this year. He's not even 26, and he's had 45.5 sacks in his young career. I think he would be an incredible addition to get that long-term security that he desires. And then at the center position, I mentioned it before, David Andrews with the Patriots. He's a cheaper option than what they have now in Matt Skura, but he would be a better option. He's the same player, maybe a little bit better at center, where you could bolster up the interior of that line, save a few bucks for the salary cap, and keep that continuity on the offensive line so that you can grind people out and open things up in the pass game.
Yeah, Danny, my list looks similar to yours. Yannick Ngakoue, I think you need to find a way to sign him back, because there's a good chance that Matt Judon will not be back in the Baltimore Ravens uniform. So being able to get him back is a plus. 9 games in a Ravens uniform, 3 starts. He had 3 sacks, 3 quarterback hits. In the entire season, he had 8 sacks. So he's still a very, very youthful, impactful edge rusher, and I think he would be wonderful in their uniform going forward. Allen Robinson, yes, please provide Lamar Jackson with a proven number 1 wide receiver. When you look at all the peers with Lamar Jackson at the quarterback position, they all have a number 1 wide receiver. Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, all those guys have a proven number 1 target at the wide receiver position. So Allen Robinson would be wonderful for Lamar Jackson and their offense. And then David Andrews. It seemed like anytime they got in a pistol formation, we saw 2 or 3 muff snaps. Week in and week out. That was one of the more consistent things you can think about when you saw Lamar Jackson line up in the pistol. Being able to get Andrews into the lineup, no question, I think he would be a much improved player, and he would be an improvement from what they had last year, and he might be a bit cheaper. So I think all 3 guys that I mentioned, especially Allen Robinson, they're very, very important for their team. But if you're able to get those 3 guys, I think Baltimore would be in a real good position to be able to do a lot of positive things in 2021.
Now, both of you guys have Allen Robinson on the list. You can want him all you want, but what we're hearing is that the Bears might be tagging him, and he might not have an opportunity to try to go elsewhere. We talk about all these holes that they have, and the ability to throw the ball downfield. They need receivers. They need an interior offensive lineman. But, Danny, they're still one of the favorites in the AFC. They won 14 games 2 years ago. They won 11 games and a playoff game last year. What are your expectations going into the 21 season?
More of the same. I mean, John Harbaugh, I think, is one of the most underrated coaches in the NFL for the consistency with which he's won. They've got a clear identity. It's similar. We talked about the Titans last week and what they've built around Ryan Tannehill and the run game with Derrick Henry. I mean, there's a consistency that's there in being able to run the football. And I am a believer in Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's still a dynamic weapon at quarterback, and I do think he'll continue to get better. He is a baby at the position. He's still incredibly young. He still has, is still kind of getting used to seeing NFL defenses. And not only are the defenses adjusting to him, but I would expect Lamar Jackson to start countering and looking at what those defenses are throwing at him and having some answers for him. And sometimes there aren't answers for Lamar Jackson, as the Titans witnessed in the playoffs when he got loose a couple times. You can think you have him covered, and you just don't. So they've got an MVP at quarterback. I think they're going to give him the pieces that he needs as far as an offensive threat goes, even though Eric DeCosta says, hey, it doesn't have to be that number one receiving option. They're going to get him some help on that side of the ball. So I think this team is the best in the division. When I look at the Browns, do I trust them more? No, they've been incredibly volatile. They're up and down. They've got talent, and Baker Mayfield's look better. But I trust the Ravens year in and year out to put out a winner because of their coach, because of their front office, and because of their quarterback.
My expectations for the Ravens to win the division and to get into the playoffs. That's it. It's that simple. And the reason why I feel that way, Lamar Jackson, he's still the best quarterback in the division, in my opinion. He had an average year under his terms, but they still got into the playoffs. They still won a playoff game. I do believe he will be better because they will address some of the positional needs around him. Like we talked about wide receivers. I think they would add some more impactful like players at the wide receiver position that will help Lamar Jackson. I think this offense, this upcoming season, will be better than what we saw last year with some of the additions and just the growth and experience they have. And defensively, they will always be a very, very stout unit defensively. So it's not a big concern of mine. And then the coaching staff, Coach Harbaugh, one of the more respectable coaches in the National Football League. He will have his troops in place to be consistent and win a lot of ball games. So because of Lamar Jackson, just solely, win the division and get to the playoffs.
All right, Bryant McFadden, Danny Kanell, hang tight. We've got 2 more teams to preview this offseason. Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.